In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the history of gluten and how it's affecting our lives. We're going to go right back to the caveman diet. Hi, I'm Mike Hines from justknowgluten.com. Now if you like the video, you like the content, why not give it a like or subscribe to my channel. Just hit the subscribe button bottom of the screen. Right, let's get straight into the content. Wheat and other similar grains are considered by many to be godsends. Ever since we became self-sufficient and discovered farming and agriculture, we have utilized wheat and grains in a wide variety of different ways. From bread and pasta to beer and wine, wheat is seemingly the gift that keeps on giving. There is, however, a downside to being self-sufficient. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last decade or so, you'll have noticed how many more people seem to be adopting a gluten-free diet. Initially, people thought it was just a fad or a trend set by hipsters looking to stand out and rebel against society. It turns out, however, that gluten-free diets were not just fads at all, and that in actual fact they are able to provide a wide range of health and wellness benefits to those that follow them. But why do people feel the need to adopt a gluten-free diet and lifestyle in the first place? Well, in order to obtain an answer to that, we need to go back in time more than 1 million years. Let's talk about the caveman diet. Back in the Paleolithic era, the Paleolithic era lasted from 2.6 million years ago to about 12,000 years ago. Back when our caveman ancestors roamed the earth, we had no farms, no convenience stores, and certainly no pizza delivery services. In fact, the food we used to eat back then had to be found, foraged, or killed. Cavemen would hunt and kill wild animals. They'd snag fish if they could. They'd eat nuts, seeds, berries, and anything else deemed edible that grew in the wild. Nowadays, paleo diets are hugely popular. The common misconception about these diets is that they are for weight loss. They're not. They're primarily to help people avoid common food allergies and intolerances and the nasty side effects that go with them. You see, back then, cavemen were not obese, they didn't suffer from food allergies, and they didn't need to use prescription medications to control and regulate a wide range of different health issues based primarily on the modern westernized diet. Granted, life expectancies back then were very low, but causes of death were deemed normally to be of natural consequences. Though wheat and similar grains did grow in the wild, back then we had no idea they were edible, so we stayed well clear. Around 10,000 years ago, give or take a few decades, something changed. We went from hunting and foraging our food to being self-sustainable. Yes, we discovered farming and agriculture, and we discovered that grains could be grown in the ground, harvested and processed to make edible items like primitive types of bread. That means that evolutionarily speaking, we have only been eating gluten for around 10,000 years. Now that might seem a long time, but considering the other foods like those followed on paleo-based diets have been consumed for more than 10 times the amount of time that you can see our digestive systems may not have actually had time to catch up. It is believed that we first began harvesting wheat around 8800 BCE. Primarily it was harvested in Egypt, Mesopotamia and Assyria. Around 5000 BCE, however, many other parts of the world were also harvesting wheat. During the Bronze Age, spelt became a staple ingredient in diets all over the globe. By the 15th century, the New World was regularly harvesting and processing wheat and similar grains to make all kinds of delicious creations. By the 19th century, brewing and bread making techniques really improved and things continued to grow and expand from there. So how is gluten affecting our health? Gluten comes from the Latin word for glue. This is because it is able to hold grains such as wheat together and bind them. This protein is responsible for giving grain-based products such as bread and pasta their soft and chewy texture. Now, a lot of people can quite happily eat gluten to their heart's content, so surely it's harmless enough. Well, not exactly. You see, 1 in every 133 United States citizens suffers from some form of gluten intolerance. As more and more research is being conducted on gluten and the potential health risks it presents, scientists are finding more and more evidence to suggest that to some individuals, gluten does appear to be more harmful than others. Experts believe that if we were to go back to how we initially farmed and processed grains, we'd be much healthier than we are now. They believe that most grains consumed today have been so heavily processed, altered and modified that they are very different to the ones we ate thousands of years ago. So now that we know a little more about gluten and why potentially it can be harmful to our bodies, we need now to address the issue of whether you may be potentially suffering from celiac disease or a gluten sensitivity. The two are very often confused with one another, but there are differences, and it pays to understand these differences so as to avoid a misdiagnosis. So let's have a look at the differences between gluten sensitivity and celiac disease. Celiac disease is a condition that is genetic. This autoimmune disorder results in an individual suffering from adverse reactions when they consume gluten, or even a small trace of gluten for that matter. When celiac disease occurs, it results in the small intestine becoming swollen and inflamed. When this happens, it is unable to absorb the nutrients from the foods and drinks we consume. What's more, it can also result in other adverse reactions and side effects, including diarrhea, fatigue, gas, bloating, stomach cramps, constipation, weight loss, anemia, itchy skin and rash, and depression. The scientific term for what happened during celiac disease episodes is villus atrophy. This basically means fattening of the cells which line the small intestine. The aforementioned symptoms of celiac disease are the most common, though there are over 200 symptoms. Roughly 1% of the world's population has been diagnosed with the disease, though a lot of sufferers are believed to have not yet been diagnosed. Let's talk about gluten sensitivity. Gluten sensitivity, or non-celiac gluten sensitivity, is not as well understood as celiac. Gluten sensitivity is a condition whereby, upon ingesting gluten, patients experience a number of adverse reactions to said gluten, with symptoms being virtually identical to celiac disease. 6% of the world's population is thought to suffer from a gluten sensitivity. The two are very similar, though the main issue is that celiac sufferers have a leaky gut, which means that their guts have a high level of permeability, which is why they are unable to absorb as many nutrients, because they escape before they can be absorbed. People with gluten sensitivity do not have a high level of permeability, so leaky gut is not an issue. I do hope you enjoyed today's video and you found it both helpful and informative. If so, why not give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Just hit the subscribe button bottom of the screen. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video, which is, what is a gluten-free diet and is it right for me? And that will be uploaded this coming Friday. Bye bye for now. See you Friday.